Alright guys, so here we are for Friday's lesson. We've made it through the first week of doing this. Hopefully I'm going to have a small sort of feedback thing over the weekend. You are not required to do it, but I'm just looking for feedback from you guys if this is working, if it's not, if there's things that you would like better, if there's like, I don't know, it feels too much like ASMR, if I'm too close to the microphone, like anything that you want to tell me. And it'll be extra credit if you want to get a few extra points. So that'll be up over the weekend. There's some other things. I have the Unit 2 assignment is up on Canvas, the handout. Not Unit 2, the Unit 3, excuse me. The Unit 3 assignment, the end thing, so Unit 3 should be up on Canvas now. As well as what's going to be due next week, the end of Friday for a smaller assignment, the Wikipedia assignment. I'll get into the details of that at the end of this video. I'll try to be as quick as I can about that because there's a couple moving pieces and I just want to take some time to explain it. It'll be basically the same thing that was on the handout that I uploaded today, but that should be on there as well. But before we get into anything, one of the things that I wanted to make mention of is if you guys haven't heard about it, or if you have and you're not sure what's going on, is because of everything going on with everything becoming an online session now, and that what that does to, well, the usability of the courses. I mean, like, we're very limited as we are right here. You can now opt, if it's the best thing, I would strongly encourage you to email me, or even better, have like a Zoom meeting with me if you want to do this. But now you can opt into having an SU or pass fail grading system for the course. So that's not per assignment, that's for the whole thing. And to the best of my knowledge, that if you opt to do this instead of normal grading, it doesn't hurt your GPA, it doesn't even affect your GPA at all. But an S, which is a pass, an S for a pass, I don't know why they're called this, SNU, but that's the equivalent of that you got a bare minimum of you have to get at least a C- in the course in order for you to be considered passing. So just with everything going on, if you guys want to do that, I'll post a document up on Canvas. I might try to put a link in the description. If you go like this, not like this. A link in the description to that specific place where you guys can have it if you don't have the handout already. But again, if you are thinking about doing this, I would strongly encourage you to come talk to me first, because this is kind of like neutral. It doesn't affect your GPA at all, but if you want your GPA to go up, I mean, if you have better than a C-, it's to your benefit to keep normal grading because that helps your GPA instead of does nothing. But for some people, if you're like, nah, I just want to do pass or fail, that was something that's been going around the university lately. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that before we move forward, because that is something that I want you guys to be aware of. A tool that if you want to use in this strange day and age, feel free to. I encourage you to look into this to see if it's in your best interest. And before you do it, I obviously can't control if you do it or if you do it without talking to me or not, but I would strongly encourage you either talk to me or email your advisor before opting into this, because I don't think it'll let you go back, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway, alright, moving on to the very next thing, which is I asked you guys to read a bit from Paideia and from Habits. But the main thing we want to look at today is what you guys had to read for Paideia, which is a couple different things, but it's testing for crap, which essentially stands for currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. They all rhyme except for the last one. So what this is a way to evaluate sources. So we're going to go through each one real quick. Just this is by and large what we're going to be doing today. Kind of chill for Friday. There's no reading and stuff over the weekend, but towards the end of the video, I'll be talking about all the readings and stuff we'll be looking forward towards next week, because I do want to get that to you guys for next time. I may actually lie. There might be a single thing of reading for over the weekend, but I'll have to check it when we get there. But anyway, what is testing for crap? So start with the first one. So when you're checking the currency of something, what do we mean by that? Just, how recent was the source published? Pretty straightforward. And for that, I don't think I need to explain highly, in depth, why that's really important, because if you're doing, a look at, economics for something, if you getting all your sources from back in the 1980s, that's not what's happening anymore. A lot of stuff has changed. Now there's, for different fields, because I know a lot of you guys are all in different studies, the time frame that this works for is very different. Because I know for mine in the humanities and English, this time frame that it's relevant here is usually back into the 90s. So we have almost 30 years of leeway. On the other hand, if you're in tech, if you're in computer sciences, your currency is last week sometimes, because technology or software updates and things change so rapidly that if there's anything before then it's not worth talking about. None of the basics and things that are always true, but there's shifting time frames depending on what area of study you're looking at. And that's the main thing we want to be looking at when you're looking at currency, is when things happen in relation to when we're trying to, what question we're trying to answer. Because one thing, if you're looking for things in the modern day, you're going to be looking at sources that are, more recent. But if you're trying to study something that happened back in the 1950s, then you probably want to find sources from back around then, typically. It all depends on what your field of study is and when the thing you're studying is going to be, when the source is. News is a big thing because, if it's not up to date, then who cares, kind of. All right, moving on to the next one is for, that's a terrible looking R. Relevancy. So relevancy is just, what does it have to do with your topic? And again, I'm trying to spend forever and a day on each one of these things, which is breaking it down, because these are the criteria you're going to be looking at and that I will ask you guys to look at moving forward when we're looking, or when you're doing the annotated bibliography at the end of the unit. The relevancy, what does it have to do with your topic? So for instance, if you're citing a source that is, referring to the efficiency of donut production and your topic is on global warming, I'm not saying that couldn't ever be related, but you would have to do some mighty fine wrangling to connect those two things. It wouldn't seem on the surface very relevant. So that's what you want to be looking for, is whenever you're looking at a source, how much does it actually have to do with what you're examining? Now, a tricky thing is, you want to be, relevance is a really good help, or is really helpful when you're looking at broader search terms, but with any kind of research, you want to try to be as specific as you can get, because that's going to get you the information that answers your research question, which is something we're going to be talking about towards next week. So this is something to be, I cannot talk today. This is something to keep in mind as we're moving forward, because this will become particularly important if you ever are researching something that's a little vague, or on the flip hand, that's incredibly narrow, like a very niche thing, because the relevancy can vary widely. Something like if your topic is too broad, then everything seems relevant, and you don't really come up with any new information or anything that's, that nobody else knew beforehand. You're not connecting any new dots. But if it's too small or too narrowly defined, then you're not going to find anything that's relevant, because your parameters are so narrow. But that's relevancy. All right, move on to the next one. All right, I think of it as two A's. I think it's authority. We'll just put authority first. Authority, who wrote it? And why should we believe them? Because you wouldn't believe just anything off of any old Joe Schmo that you meet on the street. If you're having, you're researching something that's a very technical topic, like, I don't know, computer design or computer programming, you don't want just anybody to tell you that, partially because they could tell you something that's totally wrong about code, but also they might have no idea whatsoever. But it's also, so this is looking at, going back to the rhetorical appeals and all that jazz we were looking at before, this is the ethos. You're going to be evaluating the ethos of whatever source it is. And a big important part of this is whenever you're using or finding sources online, if it's an encyclopedia or a database, then it usually has an editor, not an author. I don't know why I capitalized the D instead. Anyway, who cares? Before this, for anything that's like a collected whole, you will probably have an editor and not necessarily an author. But for anything that's like a news article or anything that's not, a bunch of information being brought together, in which case that would be a bunch of different authors, and it doesn't have an author, so anything that looks like it should be just by one person but doesn't have an author attached to it, you want to be very suspicious of that. That's probably not a very reliable source. A, because if they're not comfortable putting their name on it, then what they wrote is suspect. You wouldn't want to, couch your argument in something if somebody else, the person who wrote it, doesn't even want their name attached to it. But the other thing is, sometimes if there isn't an author attached to it, it could be an organization. Associated Press is one that gets around a lot. That's a name that'll get attached to things as the author, and that's obviously not a person, but that's the authorial group. But you want to be thinking about who wrote this, and maybe why they wrote it. What are their credentials? Are they an expert in the field that they're writing on? Is it an editorial? Something that's, it's not designed to be... it's not designed to be technically informative. It's an opinion piece. It's an op-ed. So that's some things to be thinking about whenever you're looking at a given source, is the authority of it. The other thing is the accuracy. Is it correct? Now, you think this should be relatively straightforward, but especially in our day and age, it's not always. A good rule of thumb, and for something that is so important, we're not going to spend that much time on it, because it's a really easy check for a lot of things, is if something seems suspicious or overblown or too good to be true, oftentimes it usually is. And what you want to do is then try to find at least one, maybe two other places that seem to say the same thing. Because if one source has something that's incredible, that's very unlikely. But if you're finding it in one or two other places on top of that, then you're much closer to verifying it. So I'm not saying you have to do that with every source, but especially because I'm asking you guys to do quite a bit of research for this final unit project for 12 sources, or even just 6 if you opt to do the other option. And you're noticing one of those is saying something that's very different than the rest. That doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't accurate. It might just be a contrary view, which can definitely exist, especially when you're doing in-depth research. And it's exciting to come across those conflicting ideas. But if you're finding that it's not, acknowledged as a legitimate position in the community that you're researching into, or the set of information you're researching into, then you want to be suspect to it. So using other sources to verify the accuracy of it is a good starting point for a lot of things. All right, moving on to the next one. And of course, the fifth and final one, is there 5? There is 5. But the fifth and final one that you want to be looking at is, of course, purpose of what it was. Why was this written? Because if you're looking at a piece and for whatever reason it seems like, oh yeah, this will be cool, including here, but it's, it was meant for entertainment, it was meant for education, or even for the audience that it was intended for, which is much younger and things have been simplified. Or on the flip side, if it's meant for a very, very specific audience that has, is in on the jargon and technical terms of a specific field and you have no idea what's going on, that's something to be thinking about. So this is going back to all that stuff about the appeals, about being aware of the audience. But in this case, it's not only just the audience. You are the audience. You have to be aware of whatever the reader... It's kind of doing reverse engineering for why the piece was put into existence in the first place. What audience was this, this author looking to do? Is it a technical audience? Was it an entertainment piece? Is the audience supposed to be well informed? Are they, coming from a contrary position, so this person believes something opposite to what they're trying to address in their given audience? So this is a really important thing to be looking at whenever you're evaluating the sources. So that's enough we'll spend on that. But I cannot talk today. But looking and testing for crap is a big thing, and kind of rehashed what the book really went over. But just to go a little bit more in depth with some of the things that are in here, or not in here, but not in here, but in Paideia. Cannot talk today. All right, but that's it for crap. Now let's get into some of the final things for the wiki assignment, which is going to be due next Friday. But that also reminds me, for this Friday, this video is probably going to run a little bit longer, or a little bit on the longer side, just because there's a lot of information to cover. So for this Friday, when you guys are seeing this, I think it goes until, no, I think it's due tomorrow, is the RR replacements assignments, which is just to write a page about 3 things that you guys learned during last unit, because I can't pick up your physical response records anymore. I'll say this for a couple, again, cannot talk today. I will say this again, if I already have your copy of the response record in the physical copy, then you don't need to do this. I have yours, I'll grade it just as normal. But because I can't get it from all of you guys, just the 1-page thing as a way to fill in that grade and give you guys a couple extra points moving into this unit's, is why I want you to do this. Anyway, okay, so moving on to the wiki assignments. So should be up on Canvas at the time that this is airing. And that's going to be the other major thing for this unit. There's going to be 3 assignments for the unit. So besides the quizzes and the word of the days, these 3 things are the only thing you guys have to worry about. The first one is the response record replacement assignment. The third one is going to be the final Unit 3 project, where you guys have 12 annotated bibliography, 12 sources, 12 annotated sources, or the 6 annotated sources and the persuasive essay, whichever you guys choose. The second one is going to be the wiki assignment, just for simplicity's sake. Now what that's going to do is, for you guys, so this is meant to be partly a little bit of a jump start for your Unit 3 research. Because what you're going to be doing is you're going to find your topic, that's supposed to spell topic, or your issue on Wikipedia. So try to find a home page or the main page that seems to talk about that. Try your best. I know for some of them that's not entirely possible, because some of them might be on the broader side, or although Wikipedia has a lot of things, it may not have yours. But try to find one page that seems to be specifically about your topic. Now, what I want you to do is, I briefly mentioned the research question, and we'll go into this more next week as we get closer to the actual date of that. But if you wanted to start doing research or just looking at things over the weekends, I didn't want to stand in your guys' way. Also just wanted to get this into your guys' hands as quickly as possible. But what you're going to be doing is, I want you to answer the question. So in regards to your topic or the issue that you chose for Unit 2, because that's where we're going to be juggling with for the rest of the semester, basically, is you're going to want to look at what makes this issue important. And that referring back to, again, whatever topic or issue that you were looking at. What makes this issue important? Now, I want you to only use, for simplicity's sake, when we actually get into more research, so for the last assignment, for the third one, where you're doing the 12 annotated sources or the 6 in the essay, you can use any sources that you want, except Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is not terribly reliable for some things, but it's a good starting point. It's a useful tool, but it's not the only one you want to have. But for this, because it is a useful thing, that's why we're going to be using it this time. But for the Unit 3 project, whatever you guys are, not whatever you guys are doing for it. I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, right, that's what it was. Is for your final bibliography assignment, because you're going to be doing a lot of research. This might be able to give you a jump start on that. But I want you to be thinking about trying to answer this question of what makes your issue, important. Now, the specific way I want you to do that is you can obviously hop around Wikipedia as much as you want, look at different places to your heart's content. I would encourage you, while you can do that, and I'm sure they're not going to stop you, I would even suggest that if you have something that you was immediate connection, then go ahead and do that. But if you don't and you don't really know where to start, then I would suggest just using the hyperlinks. So the underlined, like, you guys know what hyperlinks are. Those underlined blue things that take you to another web page. And usually Wikipedia pages have like just dozens and dozens of those. So what you guys are going to do is, for the final paper, because this will be a paper, it's going to be about roughly 2 pages. But instead of you writing a report or trying to convince me or do anything along those lines, I want you to do some research around your topic, trying to answer this question of why it's important, using the hyperlinks and just learning more about your topic through those links and connections that are on the web page. So for whatever issue or topic you guys had chosen. Now, what I want you to do is, for that roughly 2 pages, is I don't want you to write about the topic per se, but I want you to describe your process of trying to answer this question. Now, what do I mean by that? So not only do I want you to be talking about, like, if you're talking about, free trade for coffee or something along those lines, because a lot of trade with coffee is usually unequal, and the coffee importers for like Africa or South America, they usually get gypped for their end of the deal. If that, just as a sake of example, if that's what you're looking at, and you're looking into, the history of coffee exports, or, colonial things, or, shipping lanes or things going on those lines, like, it can be anything. I do want you to tell me about that, but that's not the main thing. I want you to tell me how that connects back to your main issue, using these things right here, using the hyperlinks. So you're not going to be describing not only what you found, that's not the emphasis, that's not really what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to write 2 pages of how you got to those places. What were the links? What were the questions? What were the different things that led you to find out new information? How did you go about trying to answer this question? The how of it is what I want you to write the 2 pages on. Not necessarily what you found per se, but how you went about trying to answer it. What links or what questions or what avenues did you go down to try to tackle this question? Now, one thing I will say is I'm going to be particularly a bit more of a stickler on fluff for this essay. I don't want you to just write 2 pages or around 2 pages just for its own sake. And like, I guess I'm short, I'll just like fluff this out a little bit and talk about a topic. If it seems like you're writing just a report about your topic here, I will take points off. So I do want to know something about what you're doing for your topic, the specifics you found, but I want to know more about how you found them. What were the connections? What are the places you went? Which means you might have to look around a couple other websites. You might have to do a bit of work. That's one of the reasons I wanted to tell you guys about this far in advance, so that you have the time to do that should you want to make use of it. But looking at this, if you're coming up short on the 2 pages and you've run out of things and you're not sure what to do, then I would recommend going back to the homepage and trying to find some hyperlinks that you haven't looked at before. Some things at the bottom, or even the references at the very tail end, to looking into those books or those experts or the history or controversy or anything else that surrounds it. Another good question is, because we're talking about the issues you guys were facing, why haven't those been solved yet? It might be a really nice tangential question to go to this. So, looking at that, that's what I want you to do for those 2 pages. It's not going to be a report about your issue, but you're going to be trying to answer the question, why or what makes your issue important? And then your paper is going to be about how you went about answering this question. I've probably sounded like a broken record and said that like a couple things here like 24 times, but I really want to emphasize that this is not a report about your topic. You will inevitably find out new information about it, and that's great, and that should show up a bit in here, but this is more about how you went about answering the question rather than what you found when you answered it. For as much sense, hopefully, as that makes. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, because this video is already running kind of a bit long. Usual formatting things apply, Times New Roman 12, your name in the upper left, double spaced, you guys know what's going on. I will say also, because I noticed a couple people were panicking about some things, if it's more than 2 pages, that's fine. Don't worry about it. The length is not the most important thing. Just don't write me a book at the expense of this. Don't make it too terribly long. If you found that much research, that's great, because that means you have quite a bit of a jump start on the final project. But I'm just talking kind of in circles right now, so I think we'll cut it off there. But again, if you guys have questions about this, any of the stuff we were looking at, oh, that's right, before we leave, I'm going to get to the readings and everything for this coming week. So let me make sure that I have this here. Okay, so the readings are as follows. So this is Monday, this is Wednesday, and this is Friday. So I'll put this up. You don't have to just panic write it from watching the video. I'll be sure to put this up so you guys have a hard copy. But just to put it on here. For Monday, I'm going to read Habits, page 119 to 127. And then for Wednesday, it's going to be Paideia, page 47 to 52. And then Friday, it's going to be Habits again, page 241 to 248. And to reiterate, I just want you to read them. Anything that I'll ask you about them will be in the quizzes, so there's no extra assignments on top of that. Don't worry about it. You don't have to do anything like the exercises at the end. You do not have to do that. All right, and just for something else to go along here. No, I think that's actually just about it. All right, so that should be everything. Oh, there's also the Wikipedia assignment will be due on Friday on Canvas by midnight. All right. I think that should be everything. So until next week, because this will be on the quiz, I would encourage you to read it over the weekend because it's a little bit longer. But the quiz that will require it isn't until Tuesday of next week. So if you wanted to do it on Monday, you could. I personally wouldn't put it off. But I'll leave that up to you guys. Anyway, so looking at this is everything for next week. We want to do today. That's it. And I'll see you guys on Monday.